Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Bernet. I work for LocWorld Conference and also the Localization Institute, and I'm thrilled to be here today with the instructor for our new Global Content Effectiveness Seminar, which will take place on Monday, July 11th in Berlin, Germany. I'm here with Bruno Herrmann. Bruno, how are you today?
I'm great, Alex. How are you?
Good, and thanks for taking time for this interview today.
You're welcome.
Great. So let's jump in. I want to ask you first. So the Global Content Effectiveness Seminar focuses on various aspects of the global content delivery process. And I wonder, can you tell me, how are local customer experiences directly affected by various aspects of global content effectiveness for multinational companies?
That's a great question, and actually, it's going to be one of the focuses in my session. I would say that typically people who are involved in operations, in the production of delivery of content, whether it's a globalization team or a localization team, they see their work as part of a global supply chain, because content is something that fits nicely in a content supply chain. And this is, of course, very useful when you have to drive and when you have to control what you do with your content, when you create it, when you localize it, when you deliver it to the right customers, etc. But customers don't see that in the same way. They see your content as a value chain. So instead of talking about the content supply chain, they would talk about a content value chain, so that they can get the content that you are going to deliver, that you're going to create first and then deliver at the right time, in the right place, and in the right format for them. So they expect the content to create value. I know it sounds quite obvious, but it's probably easier said than done, because we all know in this industry and even outside this industry that managing content globally, managing global content operations takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy. It's a big investment for many organizations. So what I would like to really achieve during the session is also to explain that everything that people do in the content supply chain has an impact on the customer experience, which is the content value chain. And I would say that ideally, those two chains, so the content supply chain and the content value chain, should be synchronized if we want to deliver truly local customer experiences. And that's what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to share some experiences and potentially also ask some people to share their own experiences and discuss with the participants how they could do it differently, so that they can really try again if they failed, or if they're successful, they can share their own experiences with the rest of the group.
And that's one of the great things about the seminar format, is that we'll be a nice, small, intimate group, having one of our first in-person events again in a long time. So the ability for our attendees to share experiences and discuss is going to be a big part of it. I wonder, in your experience, does the C-suite understand and appreciate that connection between customer experience and content effectiveness? How do you go about communicating and convincing them of the importance of focusing on it?
Another great question. I've seen people really understanding and buying in. I wouldn't say quickly, but based on some data and based on some concrete arguments, they were able really to support and even sponsor global content operations and global content effectiveness. And I've seen some other people also in the C-suite not really willing to understand, or not being able to make the connection between global content effectiveness and in a broader way, global content operations and the bottom line, so the revenues or the growth that were targeted by the organization. So I would say that in my experience, and I will of course share more details during the session, but it's usually much better to start from a client perspective, from a client experience perspective, because if we just focus on internal operations, why we should localize content, why we should pay attention to linguistic quality, cultural effectiveness, functional effectiveness. All that will be, I'm sure, appreciated by the C-suite, but it will not immediately resonate as something that is driving profits, that is really, creating value. And that's the risk, because a number of people in the C-suite might just see that as a cost center, or even worse, as a cost driver. So because of that, they won't be really or immediately supportive, and they are going to miss the point, actually, which is that all that relates to global content effectiveness is all about customer experiences, customer expectations, customer requirements. And of course, when we know that those requirements, those experiences are quite different according to local markets. So it's also a way to say that, global content effectiveness is not just to manage one block of content, it's managing content, but of course that will have to be not just localized, but also delivered in multiple markets. And because of that, there will be a number of chains rather than just one chain, one sort of workflow that would be just relevant for any country in the world. So that's another dimension that is usually very useful to mention to the C-suite, is that local markets require local experiences. And if you want to deliver on local experiences, you need local data, you need local insights to be able to not just design, but also localize content, as I said, timely and effectively, and making sure that people get it when they want it.
So, while we're talking about costs and profit and the way that you convince the C-suite, are there metrics for measuring a company's global content effectiveness and for explaining how it fundamentally affects their ROI?
Yes, absolutely. There are metrics, there are indicators, KPIs, as we all like KPIs in the industry. And I would say that it's even probably one of the first priorities for a team managing localization or globalization operations, to really focus on these KPIs related to global content effectiveness. And when we talk about global content effectiveness, I'm going to, summarize it very, very aggressively here. But we talk about first linguistic effectiveness, which is all about the languages, making sure that content is not just in the right language, but with the right terminology, with the right tone, etc. Then there is a cultural effectiveness. The cultural effectiveness is related to the values and what makes a country, or even parts of a country, more specific in terms of expectations, aspirations, what people like to do, what they don't like to see, etc. So cultural effectiveness is very important too. And last but not least, functional effectiveness. I don't hear very often people talk about that. And in this, at this time, I would say, for me, it's equally important, as important as linguistic and cultural effectiveness, because we are in the digital age now. Many things that we do, much content that we consume is digital. Obviously, digital means that it has to look great. So the content has to look great, but it has to function. It has to work properly. Just take the example of an application. You download your preferred application and you are in Spain. You get it. It's in Spanish. Great. Linguistic effectiveness is reached. Then you look at the application. It's definitely localized for the Spanish market and not for another Spanish-speaking market like Mexico or Argentina, for instance. And you say, okay, great. Cultural effectiveness is addressed. And then suddenly you realize that your great content in the application doesn't work. So your application is useless. Although it has great content in Spanish for Spain, it's still not usable from a customer experience perspective because the content doesn't work properly. And that's what I call functional effectiveness. And for each of these areas, there are KPIs, and each of these KPIs can be related to one facet, I would say, of the customer experience. because, for instance, some customer experiences are really about getting content that is, scalable, that is shareable, that is memorable, etc. So you can really then sort of connect your KPIs in terms of operations with the CX KPIs, which are essentially what customers are going to pay attention to.
Some great insight there, and I'm sure it'll be, great in the format of the seminar is it's a morning seminar. It'll be about 3.5 hours long, so there'll be plenty of time to dive deeper into that, and also to have for attendees to ask Bruno questions about this as well. I did want to ask you, you've designed the seminar to be relevant for leaders on both sides of global content operations, so including those on the supplier and on the content side. Can you say a little bit more about that, and also give us a few key takeaways that attendees can expect from this seminar?
Sure. And I really wanted this session to be interactive. So indeed, if we have in the room people from the supplier side and people from the buyer side, this can actually lead to some great conversation in my experience. So it's not just me sharing and sort of giving recommendations, but it's also about people coming with their experiences, with their questions, of course, and talking to each other, not just talking to me, but we can really make that in a very interactive way. For suppliers, I would say that it's essential to really work and to really offer their services with global customers in mind. And I know, again, it sounds obvious to say that, because I'm sure that most suppliers will say, yeah, of course, Bruno, we are serving clients. But what does that mean practically in terms of internal organization, internal operations? How to shape, how to optimize, because of course some suppliers already have some good operations in place, but there is always a way to drive operational effectiveness, to increase operational effectiveness, or even to reshape operations to be even better, to have a competitive advantage versus other suppliers. So that would be my sort of focus for suppliers. And for buyers, it would be a way for them to really understand how they should select their suppliers, because there are so many suppliers of localization and globalization services. It is quite difficult for a number of clients, or not clients yet, to make a choice, and to make that choice not just based on a nice sales pitch, but also based on what the supplier can do and will do. And we can talk about the importance of capacity, of capabilities, and how a client should select then a supplier or multiple suppliers, not just because it sounds nice, but also because it's going to really create value for the client itself and for the client of the client, and so on. So it's really important to combine both. And I would say key takeaways will be really how to, as I said, how to synchronize workflows, supply chains between what is purely internal operations and what is also impacting local or global customer experiences. And there are many ways to and there are many subtopics actually to discuss for that. But I would like really to make sure that people leave the room with takeaways and things, advice maybe, or even some best practices that they might be able to implement in their organization. So I would like them to go back to their country or to their company and say, oh, I heard this, I heard that. I think that's something that I should at least try in my company, in my organization, because I believe that if I do it, or at least if I try it, I can really make a difference, and I can even make myself or my team shine in the rest of the organization, because I know so many people in localization and globalization are sometimes desperate to be recognized in their organization. So I would like to give them ways and information and experiences that would enable them to get out of the shadow where they might be for the moment.
The last thing that I want to focus on is you've had a really fascinating personal journey in localization, and having worked with you, I know you've had roles at HP, at Nielsen, and several other companies. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how those roles and your personal journey have prepared you to teach this seminar. Excuse me, as one of the leading evangelists on global content effectiveness, why does this stuff matter so much, and what are the consequences of ignoring it?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest, when I'm leading those workshops, those sessions, I don't want to talk so much about myself. I want to talk about what I've seen, what I've been able to try myself, successfully or unsuccessfully. So I would say in so many years of experience in different industries, in different companies, in different countries as well, there are things that I've been able to deliver and be successful, and there are things that I've been trying and not being successful. But at least I can tell other people that maybe those things that have not been successful for me might not be successful for them. So why it's so important is because I realized when I started my career in the 1990s, translation was very much and is still for some parts of the organization a commodity. So I thought that commoditized content was certainly something relevant for some companies and potentially for some industries, but more and more clients along the way, I've seen that since the beginning of, I would say, the new century. Even starting at the end of the 1990s, more and more organizations started to think about the money that they were spending in localization or in translation for some of them, in localization, in global content management. And they were starting to think about, how can this all create value for me and for my own clients? So they were saying, maybe it's not something that we should always consider as a commodity. And when I say again, commodity is the sort of operations that we're talking about. It might just be just translation, or it might be the whole content management lifecycle. And they said, I should really think about it. And how can I maybe spend a bit more, but to make it so much more valuable for me? And how can I make it also cost effective? Because some organizations realized that they were investing a lot of money in their global content. And since it was just a commodity, the focus was not really on effectiveness. It was on quality, which is highly subjective, as we all know. Alex, something which is great for you might not be great for me. So it's the same for everybody. Quality is highly subjective, and it's been a debate for many years in the industry. So also effectiveness, by moving from quality to effectiveness, it became also much more concrete, much more effective to measure what the content was going to be and how it was really. Not just good or bad, not just I like it or I don't like it, but based on KPIs, based on requirements, based on customer experiences, to make sure that everything that was done in the global operations in general was going to meet those expectations, those aspirations. So that's what I've learned in so many years. And now at this point in time, although I'm not that old, but I'm getting older, I'm happy to share these experiences, these findings with other people. And most of all, I want to hear from other people too, because I know I learn every day, just like many people. And I also do this to make sure that I can not just speak, but I can also listen to other people, and I can think about what they say from my own perspective. So I would say it's a win-win. It's a real win-win, because I enjoy doing it, not just to share, but also to receive.
Well, Bruno Herrmann, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me this morning. On behalf of Ulrich Hennis and our whole LocWorld and Loc Institute teams, we're really excited to produce the Global Content Effectiveness Seminar with you on Monday, July 11th in Berlin, Germany. There's more information on both the LocWorld and Localization Institute websites. If you have any questions at all about this, please feel free to reach out to me at alex@localizationinstitute.com. If you have any questions for Bruno about the content, I'd be happy to share those questions with him and get you an answer as well. So we're really excited for Berlin. Bruno, I can't wait to see you there. Thanks again for taking time with me this morning.